So I'm going to give sort of an update on what's been happening with OpenVnmrJ. This is sort of a history. In August of 2016, version 1.1 was released. Right about that time is when I was released from Agilent. And in 4 years later, we did OpenVnmr 2.1. And during those 4 years, basically what we did was we made it so that you didn't have to install VnmrJ, get it from Agilent. You didn't have to install the 110 patches all there. And we also made it so it would work independently of acquisition, included all the acquisition software. But most of the time, we spent developing the craft application. Chris and I worked with other people, and a lot of that time was to improve the craft application. It's been downloaded. It's on GitHub. It's all open source. It's been downloaded over 2,400 times. Last year at this time, it was downloaded 1,600 times. So in the past year, it's been downloaded about 800 times, which seems pretty good to me. We've expanded the systems that works on. VnmrJ only works on CentOS 6, but ours, OpenVnmrJ, works on the later CentOSs. It also works on Ubuntu and Mac OS, from Yosemite to Catalina, and number 11 is Big Sur. So those are the OSs that are currently supported. There's been a little bit of changes in the OS world. CentOS ended support of version 6 last November. So if you start to see pop-ups on your window about problem connected to a software source, it's because you've got your system set up to request updates, security updates, and you're running CentOS 6, and CentOS is saying, sorry, we don't do that anymore. So that's why that little pop-up is showing up. They've also said that CentOS 7, which wasn't released that long ago, they're going to continue maintenance updates until June 2024, but no more full updates. What that means is they're not going to support new hardware, but they will supply you with security patches and bug fixes and things like that. But they won't necessarily support new hardware. CentOS 8, which is even newer, they're going to end at the end of this year. And what they've replaced it with is something they call CentOS Stream, which in some sense, it's like a perpetual beta version. So it's not clear to me that that's suitable for NMR systems, but if you want to try it, it's up to you. To their credit, Red Hat has added a new subscription mechanisms where you can get a free subscription for up to 16 systems. So that's a reasonable thing. There is also Oracle Linux. I'm not too sure about that one. I don't have much to say about Oracle Linux. So we decided to take a separate approach and support Ubuntu. So thanks to Ken and Steve at Virginia Tech, we were able to get OpenVnmrJ working on an Innova system, which they have. It was a bit of, took us a couple weeks, but eventually we got everything going. If it works on Innova, it will also work on Mercury, since those use the same mechanisms. Following the help from Ken and Steve, Torsten at Bridge 12 allowed me access to one of his DDR systems. So he basically bought one of these little Intel NUC computers. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're kind of cute little things. He installed Ubuntu on it and hooked it up to his VnmrS system, and then gave me free access. So we've also now got it working on all of the DDR and DD2 systems. This is the list of sort of the things that have changed since version 2.1, which happened a year ago, just a little over a year ago. I color coded them. So the green things are things that have been requested either through spin sites or directly to me. Something that's not working, a bug report or something. The blue ones are credited to Bert Heise. All the blue things are something that Bert has delivered. He has access to spectrometers, so most of his things are actually acquisition related. I don't have the spectrometer that I have access to, so Bert has been very good about supplying these sorts of corrections. I'll just go over a couple of them that are kind of interesting. The very first one, actually, came from Ken. He says, you know, we do a lot of proton phosphorus. And, you know, it does phosphorus and it tunes low band to phosphorus. We do proton and it tunes low band to carbon, but we're not really doing carbon. Why does it keep tuning low band between carbon and phosphorus when we're not doing any carbon? So we fixed that. So it will only tune what you asked for. There's a down the sort of a little further down, PS font and PS font 2, you can sort of customize when you're doing report generation. You can set the fonts and the character sizes and things like that. The next one after that, this thing called weight file, no CT scaling. It's been, I remember from very early on, people say, you know, I increase NT or NS, whatever you want to call it, number of transients, and my peaks don't get any bigger. Why is that? Well, we say, well, we scale the FID by, we divide, so your peaks don't get bigger, but your noise gets smaller. It never really felt like people appreciated that. So I added this thing so that now if you set NT, you're doing it right, they get bigger, your peaks will get bigger. So that helps. I'll skip the rest. Here's another page of things that have changed since the last release. Again, blue ones from Bert. Most of the ones that aren't either blue or green are basically things that Chris and I have been working on to support the craft project, and a lot of new tools and things for speed enhancements. One of them, I think it was on this page actually, in the right-hand column, the second and third one, copy F, copy string. I'll talk about those a little bit in a couple of slides. Those are things that we did for craft. Another page of stuff, you know, Mac OS Pulse tool. So actually a lot of things have changed. I actually wanted to thank 4 people in particular, Bert, because of his contributions to OpenVnmrJ. Again, all of these acquisition related corrections come from Bert. Jesse, I treat him sort of as my early warning system. He actually builds OpenVnmrJ from the GitHub site. He brings down the sources and compiles them on his machine. And he's usually the one who lets me know, you know, something's not working right here. He's the one that alerted us all to the fact that CentOS is doing these things where they're discontinuing support. And we had to start to scramble about, you know, people have just installed CentOS 8 and now they say they're not going to support it anymore. What do you do? Ryan, anything that has to do with the Mac, Ryan is on top of it. I think maybe between 10 and 20 of the items in the previous 3 slides are the result of Ryan finding something that's not working on a Mac or things like that. Chris, I mean, Chris is my first line of defense. I've sent him, I think at last count, 227 different versions for that he tests and confirms that, yeah, that's working or it's not working. So he's been very active in making sure the quality of the product is okay. I think I just got one from him not too long ago that says, you know, there's something wrong with Fiddle when he does it with Craft, and 216 worked. We number them. So we're talking, you know, 216 worked and 217 doesn't work. And so we can sort of track and see what's going on. This is one of the new features, annotations, that was in those slides. So we've made, this is actually a Decon Eye picture, but it's all annotations. So we can pan and zoom on annotations, and the scale below here is another new feature called axis. Normally is H or P for Hertz or PPM. You can now set it to a capital S and a sort of a user-defined axis. You can give it a label with the left edge and the right edge and everything. Cursors track, pan and zoom tracks. So it's a handy little thing. I mentioned I was going to talk a little about that append string. I like to tell the story. I've done this before. One of the main things that causes there's a lot of overhead is the shell, what's called the shell command. The shell command in Magical takes an argument that says, go out into the Unix world and execute this Unix command and then come back into Magical. And I give the example is if you call shell and you say sleep for 1/100th of a second, and you call that 100 times, it should take a second. Well, it actually takes 6 seconds to execute that. And the CPU goes up to 50% usage. So it's really not a good thing. It's not really a sleep. Whereas if you call the a built-in sleep command, takes up 1 second and the CPU stays at 0. So we've replaced the whole, basically on the right-hand column are the Unix commands that have all this overhead, and we replace those with some magical commands that basically do the equivalent thing. And you can also put all these filters in there that between the file A and file B, you can grep for things and do heads and tails. And I thought what I would do is show you how the Ivan drawing macro works. So when I do the Ivan drawing, what do? I wrote a macro. So the first line is the banner welcome. This on line 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5, you see the append command, and that reg.csv, Eric sent me that, and that is the list of registrants for our meeting. So I started append, and I did the filter tail +2, which basically means skip the first line. The first line is the basically the fields of the CSV file. And this grep -v says, if you find that string, throw it out. We're not going to use it. So we eliminated all MRI employees. We eliminated all Q1 employees. And unfortunately, we also eliminated the Ivan executive committee, Dan and Christian, myself. And then it puts that onto the out file. We then read that out file into an internal thing called $line. And that $num tells us how many there are. We pick a random number, so there roughly was 220 registrants. So that num is roughly 220. We pick a random number between that, between 1 and that number, and then we index into the line that winner, and we get their first name, their last name, and their email. Actually, that in that substring, the third line from the bottom in the left column, that CSV is also a new feature. So usually substring says, give me things based on a word defined by space or tab or something. And this little thing says, well, use the CSV rules to delineate words. Next column, we sort of obfuscate the email. We didn't want it for privacy reasons. And then the winner is, and we sleep for 6 seconds just to build the tension a little bit. And then we do a little loop at the bottom for 30 seconds where we display the name and the count. So that's, if you're curious how we're doing this, that's the macro that's actually running when we hit that button. Finally, another new direction I'm taking is I've been working for, I guess this is almost 2 years now, with this company called Bridge 12. And they're building a Overhauser DNP system. It runs at roughly 14 megahertz proton. And they've decided to use OpenVnmrJ as the front end for data processing and data acquisition. So we actually run their spectrometer, and it's working very well. There's a USB interface to this, this spectrometer. Here's some examples where they turn their microwaves on and off. In the first one, you can see the enhancement, the red line versus the blue line. And you can also see in the right-hand column, the effect of the peak as a function of microwave power. All the standard OVJ features are in there. And actually, the way we've written the pulse sequence thing, you can sort of take S2 Pol and run it directly on this system. So, delay, pulse, acquire, all those sort of all those elements work with the Bridge 12 system. Our last bit of fun is actually we tuned their microwave cavity. So it's a lot like MTune, but we're actually tuning to roughly 9.5 gigahertz, and we can, it has most of the features, or basically all the features of the MTune. Again, uses the new axis equals S thing where you have gigahertz and thing. My last slide. Is it time to do OpenVnmrJ 2.2? It's been over a year since we released 2.1, and as you see, there's been quite a few updates and things that people want. They can always build them themselves, like Jesse does, if you want to go through and build it directly from GitHub. But it probably seems time to maybe release a new version. So if you're interested in beta testing, you let me know by SpinSites or email me. And if we do start a beta test, I hope it won't be too long, and we should be done sometime in May. So with that, I thank you.